Maya's hands were shaking so badly she could barely unbuckle her seatbelt, and the man sitting next to her in seat 12B had no idea that in exactly 30 seconds, she was going to lean over and whisper the 3 words that would destroy his entire world. I know you. But let me tell you how we got to this moment, because what happened on Flight 237 will leave you speechless. Hey everyone, before we dive into this incredible story, let us know where you're watching from in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories like this one. Now let me take you back to where it all began, 3 years earlier on a rainy Tuesday night when Maya Martinez was waiting for her husband David to come home from his late shift at the hospital. David was a nurse who always stayed late to help patients, and Maya had prepared his favorite dinner, chicken parmesan with extra cheese, just the way he liked it since they were newlyweds. She was sitting by the window, watching the raindrops race down the glass, when the landline phone rang at 11:47 p.m., and the voice on the other end said words that would haunt her forever. "Mrs. Martinez, there's been an accident." The drunk driver who hit David's car that night fled the scene, leaving her husband bleeding on the wet asphalt. And even though the paramedics tried everything, David died before reaching the hospital just 20 minutes away from their first wedding anniversary. The police told Maya they had a witness who saw a silver sedan speeding away from the scene. But despite months of investigation, they never found the driver, and the case went cold, leaving Maya with nothing but grief, anger, and sleepless nights filled with questions that would never be answered. For 3 years, Maya carried that pain everywhere she went, unable to move forward, unable to let go, until her sister Emma finally convinced her to take a vacation, a simple trip to Chicago to visit their cousin, and maybe, just maybe, start healing. Maya boarded Flight 237 with seat 12A, a window seat she specifically chose because she wanted to watch the clouds and pretend, even for 2 hours, that she was floating away from all her problems. As she settled into her seat, placing her purse under the seat in front of her and adjusting the air vent, she barely glanced at the man settling into 12B beside her, just another business traveler in a wrinkled shirt with tired eyes. But then, he pulled out a small notebook to write in, and Maya saw it. The thing that made her blood turn to ice. A small silver keychain shaped like a car, attached to his carry-on bag, and engraved on it were the words, "Drive safe. Love Mom." It was such a common phrase, something thousands of people probably had, but something about it made Maya look closer at this man, really look at him, and that's when she noticed his hands, the way his left pinky finger bent at an odd angle, exactly like the witness had described to police 3 years ago. The man was writing in his notebook, completely unaware that Maya was studying every detail of his face, the small scar above his left eyebrow, the way he bit his lower lip when he was concentrating. And then she glimpsed the words he was writing that made her heart stop. "Can't believe it's been 3 years since the accident. Still have nightmares about it sometimes." Maya felt like she couldn't breathe, like the airplane cabin was closing in around her, and she gripped the armrest so tightly her knuckles turned white. But she forced herself to stay calm, to think clearly, because she needed to be absolutely sure before she did anything she might regret. The man beside her introduced himself as Mike Patterson when the flight attendant came by with drinks, and he seemed so normal, so ordinary, ordering a ginger ale and making small talk about the weather. But Maya was studying his voice, trying to remember if she'd heard it before, maybe during those sleepless nights when she'd call the police station asking for updates on David's case. As the plane reached cruising altitude, Mike pulled out a handwritten letter from his carry-on, and Maya noticed his hands were shaking slightly as he read it. And every few minutes he would glance out the window with this haunted expression, like he was seeing something nobody else could see. Maya's mind was racing with possibilities, with doubt, with the terrifying thought that maybe, just maybe, the man who killed her husband was sitting right next to her, breathing the same recycled air, sharing the same small space 30,000 feet above the ground. She wanted to scream, to grab him by the shirt and demand answers, but instead, she pulled out her own notebook and started writing frantically. "Emma, I think I found him. I think the man who killed David is sitting next to me on the plane." But then she overheard Mike talking quietly to the flight attendant who had come to check on him, and Maya heard him say, "I'm sorry. I know I seem nervous. It's just hard for me to fly, especially around this time of year. Brings back bad memories." Maya listened as Mike explained to the kind flight attendant about therapy, about guilt, about how he'd been trying to make amends for something terrible he'd done 3 years ago. And with each word, Maya felt more certain, more angry, more desperate for some kind of justice or closure, or just an explanation for why her entire life had been ripped apart by this ordinary-looking man, who seemed to be living with his own guilt and pain. When the flight attendant walked away, Maya noticed tears in Mike's eyes as he continued reading his letter. And for a moment, just a moment, she felt something unexpected. Not just anger, but also a strange kind of recognition. Because she realized that while she had been living with the pain of losing David, maybe Mike had been living with the pain of taking him away. The flight was only 2 hours long, which meant Maya had maybe 90 minutes left to decide what to do with this information, this terrible knowledge that was burning inside her chest like acid. She could confront him right there on the plane, in front of all the other passengers, and demand that he confess, that he turn himself in, that he finally face the consequences of what he'd done that rainy night 3 years ago. Or she could follow him after they landed, maybe find the police and have them waiting at the gate, finally giving David's case the resolution it deserved and putting this man behind bars where he belonged. But as Maya sat there, watching Mike stare out the window with that haunted expression, she realized there was a third option, one that scared her more than the others, because it meant letting go of the anger that had been keeping her company for 3 long, lonely years. The plane hit some turbulence, and Mike gripped his armrest, whispering what sounded like a prayer under his breath. And Maya heard him say David's name, her husband's name, followed by, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I wish I could take it back." That's when Maya knew, with absolute certainty, that this was him. This was the man who had driven away from the scene of the accident, leaving her husband to die alone on that wet road, and now they were trapped together in this metal tube flying through the sky. 2 people forever connected by one terrible moment that had changed both their lives forever. The flight attendant announced they would be landing in 20 minutes, which meant Maya had 20 minutes to decide not just what to do about Mike, but what to do about the rest of her life. Because whatever happened next would determine whether she spent the next 3 years still carrying this anger, or finally, maybe finally, finding a way to let it go. Maya took a deep breath, turned to face the man in seat 12B, and with her heart pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it, she reached over and gently touched his arm, and when he looked up at her with those tired, guilty eyes, she whispered, "My name is Maya Martinez, and you killed my husband David 3 years ago." And Mike's face went completely white as he realized that after 3 years of running from his past, his guilt had finally caught up with him at 30,000 feet. And for the first time since that terrible rainy night, both of them finally had the chance to face the truth together.